So, hello. Hello, everybody. Everybody's in the right room. Nobody mixed up anything. But anyway, even if you didn't intend to come here, it's fine. I think it will be good and entertaining for all of us. If you think this is the place where you'll just sit down and listen, it's wrong. Of course, I mean, you can do that as well, but my intention is to get you talking more than me. If you check the title, and I will try to explain in the beginning what I really mean with it and what I want to achieve with this little exercise. So partial truth, the whole truth, two things, right? And then reporting on refugee issues in radicalized environment. One of the main concerns for me as a person who works for UN Refugee Agency and works with media is this whole sort of collusion that has happened. I think it's nothing new. It goes up and down a little bit during different times. Collusion between opinions and facts, right? A lot of things are spread about refugees as facts, while in reality they are opinions. And there's nothing wrong with opinions. I think all opinions more or less should be at least heard, not maybe accepted, but at least heard. And that difference is very, very important. And we should also try to understand how we think in order to get this point. And as a former journalist, I don't know, is anybody of you a journalist? You. So what do you think about in journalism when we talk about objectivity? Do you believe in it?
Not completely.
Not completely. Not me either. I'm not saying that it should not be as a sort of a goal, a guiding light, but I think any journalist, when speaking honestly, would admit there is no like objectivity, right? I mean, there are many, many different sides, and how to deal with it when you see, okay, the journalism community wants to be objective and give the public the facts and so on.
Sorry,
yeah. Good. But then you understand that that's not really possible in real life. So how to go about it? There is one Swedish journalist who I like very much. I don't think anybody of you know his name because he's known basically only in Sweden. Magnus Linton, he has been reporting a lot from Latin America and then also reporting on sort of hard polarizing issues like, for example, nationalism in Europe. And his approach to deal with this objectivity dilemma is quite simple, actually. He says, in any issue that you take up, there are a number of people who are affected and who have some interest in it, stakeholders, basically. So he says you should try to listen to as many of these sides as possible. Of course, you will never be able to cover all, but as many as possible. And try to give everybody a fair chance, right? Because it's also easy to, you give all sides possibility to say something, and then you, from one side you take good arguments, from the other side you take quotes which are, you know, stupid basically. And so, and try to avoid that. And of course, I mean, in the beginning, we have to understand what we think ourselves. What is our ideas? What is our opinions? So I will try to engage you. I will show you a couple of videos, and then we will have some exercises. So you will mainly not be sitting down. So enjoy while you can. I will show you the first video. It's kind of basic. Maybe. A bit later, you are guessing what I'm about to do, but
You already saw the video.
No, he said you won't be sitting down. Actually,
So.
they've done a study that it's good to stand up every so often when you're working.
So,
I don't know how they can. Come on, Mo.
Around the globe, there are approximately 60 million people who have been forced to leave their homes to escape war, violence, and persecution. The majority of them have become internally displaced persons, which means they have fled their homes but are still within their own countries. Others have crossed a border and sought shelter outside of their own countries. They are commonly referred to as refugees. But what exactly does that term mean? The world has known refugees for millennia, but the modern definition was drafted in the UN's 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees in response to mass persecutions and displacements of the Second World War. It defines a refugee as someone who is outside their country of nationality and is unable to return to their home country because of well-founded fears of being persecuted. That persecution may be due to their race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion, and is often related to war and violence. Today, roughly half the world's refugees are children, some of them unaccompanied by an adult, a situation that makes them especially vulnerable to child labor or sexual exploitation. Each refugee's story is different, and many must undergo dangerous journeys with uncertain outcomes. But before we get to what their journeys involve, let's clear one thing up. There's a lot of confusion regarding the difference between the terms migrant and refugee. Migrants usually refers to people who leave their country for reasons not related to persecution, such as searching for better economic opportunities or leaving drought-stricken areas in search of better circumstances. There are many people around the world who have been displaced because of natural disasters, food insecurities, and other hardships. But international law, rightly or wrongly, only recognizes those fleeing conflict and violence as refugees. So what happens when someone flees their country? Most refugee journeys are long and perilous, with limited access to shelter, water, or food. Since the departure can be sudden and unexpected, belongings might be left behind, and people who are evading conflict often do not have the required documents like visas to board airplanes and legally enter other countries. Financial and political factors can also prevent them from traveling by standard routes. This means they can usually only travel by land or sea and may need to entrust their lives to smugglers to help them cross borders. Whereas some people seek safety with their families, others attempt passage alone and leave their loved ones behind with the hopes of being reunited later. This separation can be traumatic and unbearably long. While more than half the world's refugees are in cities, sometimes the first stop for a person fleeing conflict is a refugee camp, usually run by the United Nations Refugee Agency or local governments. Refugee camps are intended to be temporary structures, offering short-term shelter until inhabitants can safely return home, be integrated to the host country, or resettle in another country. But resettlement and long-term integration options are often limited. So many refugees are left with no choice but to remain in camps for years and sometimes even decades. Once in a new country, the first legal step for a displaced person is to apply for asylum. At this point, they're an asylum seeker and not officially recognized as a refugee until the application has been accepted. While countries by and large agree on one definition of refugee, every host country is responsible for examining all requests for asylum and deciding whether applicants can be granted the status of refugee. Different countries' guidelines can vary substantially. Host countries have several duties towards people they have recognized as refugees, like the guarantee of a minimum standard of treatment and non-discrimination. The most basic obligation towards refugees is non-refoulement, a principle preventing a nation from sending an individual to a country where their life and freedom are threatened. In reality, however, refugees are frequently the victims of inconsistent and discriminatory treatment. They are increasingly obliged to rebuild their lives in the face of xenophobia and racism, and all too often they aren't permitted to enter the workforce and are fully dependent on humanitarian aid. In addition, far too many refugee children are out of school due to lack of funding for education programs. If you go back in your own family history, chances are you will discover that at a certain point your ancestors were forced from their homes, either escaping a war or fleeing discrimination and persecution. It would be good of us to remember their stories when we hear of refugees currently displaced, searching for a new home.
So perhaps, I mean, some of you knew quite a lot of this, right? More or less. It differs, but that of course does not mean that your opinions about it is the same. So let's do the first exercise. It's called the hot chair. Why hot? Because when you have an opinion, you know, it's sort of, it doesn't really come usually from rationality, it comes from more from down there. And then you have to stand up and say what you think, right? So what I will do, I will say a thing, and then if you agree with it, you stand up. And don't think too long, right? I mean, you either think, yes, this is the right thing, or no, or if you cannot decide, of course, if you don't agree, you just sit, right? If you cannot make up your mind, you can stand up like this, but that's not really comfortable, and that's the whole point, right? It should not be comfortable to not have an opinion, I think. So, are you ready? No?
Which is one disclaimer there. Some of us are working on behalf of an organization, like a governmental organization.
Yes.
Does this mean that we have to comply to our governmental position, or are we independent?
No, this is also a couple of things. In this room, when we do the exercises, nobody is allowed to question your view, right? No, you are wrong because, right? We will not have that. And no opinion is wrong here. There are just different opinions. Outside this room, yes, I know. Also, my organization has, you know, certain stances on certain issues differently in different countries and so on, and we have to abide by that. But this is an exercise, so don't be afraid. Nobody will report, oh, to your organization, he did this and he agreed to something that...
My colleague, it was his point. Well, I agree with him. We have the same background.
Right.
So because we are not here as individuals, as a personal individuals, we are here
Yes.
representing organizations. So our opinions will be the official positions.
You can do that. As I said, nobody can question.
No, it's not,
Right?
no, it's not
Right?
that.
Why you do? You can think and say, oh, okay, my organization agrees, that's why I stand up. That's fine.
I
Yes.
was just thinking, quite often, you have to have an opinion, but there are a lot of people on Facebook that have these opinions.
Yes.
Black and white opinions. But I think quite often in these issues, there isn't a black and white, and
Right.
it's something they're still thinking of. I mean, this haven't decided yet, could go on for years, because we keep getting more new information about the situation, and
Right. Yes.
so it's kind of hard to say, you know,
Yeah.
black or white.
But this is just the first exercise. There will be more. and also, I mean, you are allowed to change your opinion later on. It's not like once you stood up, that's it, you know, we got you. No. You can change it at any time. At any time, oh, you think, no, I changed my mind. That's okay.
This is
Right.
Estonia, you have to keep your word.
All right. Shall we try? Okay. The first proposition. Listen carefully to all the words. Very important. Only people fleeing war are real refugees. Only people fleeing war are real refugees. Who stands up? Nobody stands up. Okay.
If you stand up,
You agree?
okay, yeah.
No? Okay, I will play this. I will stand up, right? Why didn't you stand up?
Because not only people fleeing from war are refugees, people might be refugees if they are fleeing for something else also.
For example?
For example, persecution.
Persecution, right. Because there is no war going on, but there is persecution. Okay.
I suppose I would agree with that, and in some particular cases, yeah, political, even though it's a friendly country, there could be political persecution that, for instance, some people from one of these neighboring countries of Estonia have come to Finland or here because they're not in agreement with that particular country. So more than just persecution, it could be you're
You're thinking or
Wrong.
doing wrong things.
yeah,
Okay, against the government, basically, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Government is, and the government is, would we say persecuting, or would we say that the government is making it impossible for your life, for you to live?
Right. Interesting. Yes, you?
Maybe there are people who claim that they flee from war zones, but they are not actually, they disguise themselves. So they're not the people who are really like good guys, but they are like terrorists or some kind of this kind of people. Or other case, for example, take as an example Ukraine, where in one part is like a war,
Mm-hmm.
another part of Ukraine there is no war, but they apply for this asylum,
Yeah.
for example in Estonia, but they are not granted on the basis that the other part of Ukraine is okay, so there is no war. So.
So you take it from the other
Yeah.
side. Those
I
are
dig deeply into it.
very interesting, very interesting. I never thought this way. Thank you. You see, new things come up. It's very interesting. You?
I was thinking of sexual minorities being persecuted because of who they are in some regions of the world
Yeah.
or some states who also have to flee and who also can qualify as refugees in addition to those fleeing war.
Yeah.
Could be by political questions, by religion aspects, or religion persecution, or more not tribal but civilizational. I can say like recently in Myanmar, with those questions that happened there, there are different reasons, not only war.
Is there any clear objective indicators what does mean persecution and what does mean oppression? Because oppression is also perhaps a good indicator. But if I'm within a family, for example, in a very conservative Orthodox religious family, a woman or a girl is oppressed and she doesn't have the free choice to choose her partner, for example. Just a simple case.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a reason for her to
That could be, but
to be accepted in another case?
yeah, but I mean, the one other important element here is that that particular state, country is either unable or not willing to protect the person, because I mean crimes and human rights violation happen in all countries, but the question is can the country deal with it and does the country want to deal with it? So if that's not done, then you go to another country. That's basically the reason. And then I mean, of course it can take many different forms. Forced marriage is one of the forms, I think, definitely. Yes. Shall we take another one? Refugees must be provided financial support from the state. You agree? Okay. Or you are...
Ah.
No, you
Yeah.
keep standing.
Yeah, yeah.
Keep your stand. Okay, okay. Now we start moving. Okay, we start from you. Why do you agree? Financial support from the state, many would say, why do we need to pay them? They just arrived. My grandmother is having very little pension.
It depends how the social aid or the social security is built up in a country, but usually, well, you need to buy some things that to help the local economy going, for example, or you just need some things that social aid or social assistance doesn't always cover.
Right.
Yeah, and I know that the money that the refugees are given isn't a big thing, but it's like only for cigarettes in some countries. So people might have their needs, or just they feel better if they have at least a bit.
And you don't agree?
Yeah, well, that's another one of these things that are not black and white.
Yes.
I'll just give you an example. In Finland, I went to the barber, and he didn't speak Finnish, so he told me, well, he's from Syria. And I said, oh. He said he's a refugee. He was in Vaasa in a refugee camp. And he said that they were supported by the government. And he said, I want to work. He said, I don't want any help. I want to go work. And they said, no, no, no. They kept saying he couldn't. Finally, he said, could I just go to Helsinki and ask around? If I find a job, then you would accept it. And they reluctantly said yes. So he got this job as a barber. And he said, he said that they were not letting me be human. He said, for me, being human is having a job. He said, I don't care what kind of job it is, but I want a job. And he said that there were a lot of people there that would like to have a job too, but the government kind of is saying, no, 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 we can't let you out of this, we have to support you and this. So I thought that, if they're a young person that can work, you should say, go out and find a job. We'll help you for a while, but we want you to get a job. And the kind of support that the government often gives is probably maybe not as good as a NGO that might be able to help them get into the society. But I think the government quite often doesn't get the whole picture.
Actually, the idea I was having in my head was that during the time when they're in the camp and waiting for their results of their application. Yeah. So, but I guess refugees should be handled as locals when they are officially refugees. So in a way, you are giving money to locals. Why not you shouldn't discriminate them.
Interesting. You changed your mind while somebody was talking.
Because I agree, but I think that there should be some time limit. Like state doesn't have to support the refugees forever. Like I guess maybe for some first couple of months, or maybe for some first year, till the person won't learn the language, or till he won't find a job to support himself. I think like that.
Good point. Yes. You?
I agreed with your question. So because refugees are a vulnerable group, and we cannot compare this also with vulnerable groups who live in the societies longer, risk groups so-called, because many of the refugees come without even documents. Many of them illiterate, and so on. So also many problems they have, and it's impossible just to find a job right from scratch. It takes some time to get accommodated, or to maybe less integrated into society. So yes, I think that The question is, does the government provide this rationalized or good support to the refugees, so we can improve those measures and services? But I think in some period they should be provided to
Yeah.
refugees.
If I give you an example, now on this one, I would be this half, undecided, because if I look at all the words, refugees must be provided financial support from the state. Here is where I become a little bit cautious, because I think it should be a lot of NGOs doing things. State, something, yes, but not everything. And in some cases, NGOs can provide a bit, but of course, then again, NGOs cannot do all the job that needs to be done, become the state. They cannot do it. So that's why I'm like sort of bit in between.
But NGOs receive regularly money from the state, they cannot allocate their own resources. So in fact, the state actually supports those NGOs.
So there are, you see, yes. So of course, I agree with you. It's not black and white, and that's why there should be, of course, this uncomfortable position. But then you, as I said, you should think, okay, why I cannot decide? Why am I ambivalent? And it's interesting. You see, I mean, he gave me some good points, right? And then I can think, okay, do I agree? Do I not agree? NGOs getting money from the state or from EU, or maybe it's better if an NGO is just living from donations, being more independent, and more questions come up. What about you? Organizations?
I didn't stand up just because I think the sentence is not completed. I think you could put after the sentence, the state should support while providing language training, training or access, providing conditions to access to employment. That's what we do at this moment in Portugal. We provide, obviously, and we have to provide, and it's our humanitarian obligation to provide that financial support when people arrive, but for a certain period. But at the same time, allow the people to have language training and to provide the recognition of their competencies or their qualifications, and open the labor market also to them. That's the only reason why I didn't stand up.
So it's in Portugal. It's like connected to integration programs, right? Yeah. That's I think many countries are doing something along those lines in different ways, but it's true. Yes. And you?
The word must, I was a bit confused.
Yes.
It wasn't actually like the education. I think it's very important, the role of the state financially and with programs and capacity or whatever, but it should never be an obligation for a refugee to receive. It should be optional. And if of course, I mean, it is a fear especially in the beginning of your stay in a host country. It's theoretical that you don't need any resources from anyone, from NGO or government, but it always should be some kind of freedom for the refugee to, there are some rules, but in terms of receiving an allowance or help, it should be the refugee himself or herself to decide if he would like to need some help.
Oh, that sounds empowering. Yeah.
Linguistic objectives.
And then, of course, as you mentioned, a refugee and asylum seeker, it's not really the same. And then, of course, it gets complicated because when a person gets refugee status, this is an interesting thing to think about. It's not, they don't become refugees when they get the status. They have been refugees all the way. Now the status is a more proper way to say it. It would be, it is recognized. Right, and this is where people sometimes, no, but when he crossed the border, he was not really yet. No, but he was. So see, Yes, yes. You?
Well, I was thinking along the lines that there's so much more that needs to be done instead of, or not necessarily even instead, but in addition to monetary gains as well. That it's not enough. That you just give them a lump sum of money and say, well, live on it and see how you handle it.
Right.
So I was thinking along those lines that it's one measure, but it certainly cannot be the only measure.
Right. Yeah, yes, please.
I just, one of my countries, one of my nationalities, United States, has lately had a lot of wars. I've been involved in a lot of wars. And I live in the West Coast, so I saw a lot of refugees come. It was kind of interesting because in the States, they're not as, they're kind of saying, okay, you're here, what are you gonna, they're kind of negative. You're here, what are you gonna do? Get a job. So those people did. Not only did they get jobs and start businesses, they did better than Americans. They're much more hardworking. And then their kids went to school, and their kids have done better than the average American, those refugees from Asia that came over. I don't know the opinion of refugees now with this new administration, but before, in Europe, it's kind of, they're kind of, I get the idea that they're kind of looking at these people and going, they're negative people, they're gonna get in trouble, they're gonna do this. But in the States, it was like, at the beginning, they're going, what are all those people doing here? Wow, that's a good restaurant, I'm gonna eat there. Well, thank God we have them. Or, you know, they, you know, I can find a place where I can get my car fixed without getting ripped off. So that was the idea, getting these people into the society. And I think the government, from what I've seen, this is just to add to that, has done a pretty crappy job. And I would agree with you that maybe NGOs could do something that the government can't. Sorry if there's some government workers.
We work
I'm
together.
more NGO,
With the
I think
NGOs.
NGOs are more,
Right.
have the power to do.
As I said, I mean, opinions are from different angles, and that's fine. I mean, nobody of us, neither me or you, have the whole picture. So that's why it is important to talk to one another. Shall we take another one? Can you still digest?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's take this one. So, and this is just thing. I mean, it's the sentence does not say refugees, right? So it's all kinds of people, including refugees. Those who cross the border illegally must be punished. If you agree, you stand up. Must be punished. As for a crime, I mean, I don't mean like, you know, persecutions or anything like that. Those who cross the border illegally must be punished. Illegally means no documents or no visa.
Must or should?
Well, according to the law, it's, you know, it's either yes or no.
I guess it also would depend on the kind of punishment. Saying, I'm sorry, you'll have to leave, or, you know, you're going straight to jail.
No, I mean really some kind of penalties, like either it's a court, being in prison, or a fine or something like that.
Just to send him or her back.
That's not a punishment.
That's
No.
not
So you changed a little bit, huh?
Well, I was kind of considering deportation as punishment as well.
No, that's
Yeah, but
you're being returned to your home country. It's kind of
It may not be your home country. You come from a third
that.
state,
Yes, that's a very.
and it may be as punishment. Back to send.
Yes, you're right. Exactly, because for example, for some people who are sort of from Afghanistan, but they were born in Afghanistan and as small kids with the family, they moved to Iran, for example, speak another language, and then they become refugees, and then, or they just illegally cross the border and come to Europe, and then they are sent back to Afghanistan, where they don't even have friends or relatives, no network, nothing. So This is a very important point, right? In that sense, it is a kind of punishment. Yes, right, right. So it's complicated. Good. So you stood up and then you sat down, right? And you don't agree.
I think it depends on the purpose for the person to cross the border, because you are not talking only on refugees. On the limit, we could talk about on tourism. I want to go there. I don't have a visa. I'm going to try. But if we're talking more on political, talking more seriously on political basis, on religious persecution, I think it really depends on each concrete case.
Right. You stand up. Huh? You agree?
Yes. But I think that it depends on the person, I guess, who cross legally. Because if, for example, it's just a normal citizen who doesn't know or something like that, it can be like a small punishment, but it can be also a person who has some illness.
Mm-hmm.
He can be sick,
Yeah.
and he can like take this sickness to other countries.
Spread
for example,
spread
to
is
spread,
okay.
yes. Or it can be some drug dealer. We don't know that. That's why I think that it depends on the situation.
All right. And you? You don't want to stand up after this?
No, well, I don't think that's the only thing I would say is that, okay, the person doesn't belong there. He could be sent back to either his own country or another country, wherever he wants. And I don't think it may be a punishment, but I'm thinking of jail or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I think the only time, of course, is if there's a known drug dealer or terrorist or something like that. That's different. But a normal person, perhaps they should even be given a chance to say why they, be able to talk. It doesn't mean that they're going to be accepted, but why did you cross the border? What was the idea? So it's like, let's not have a boomerang and shoot them back across before we hear their story, and then perhaps they would be deported. But this kind of putting people in jail or whatever.
Detention centers, yeah. Yeah, and this is, I think, an interesting point, because also the right to asylum is universal. Everybody can ask for some, not be granted refugee status, but at least ask for asylum. And that's what, basically, one of the options that you are talking about, that let's hear the story. Maybe the person wants to apply for asylum. We don't know that yet. And that's also, in some countries, it's problematic, because people are not even given the chance to, fill in the form and do that. They are just, if you just cross the border, you're just there, the border guards put you back, and they don't even get the chance. So, and that's considered not to be a fair praxis. But of course, we hear also arguments that everybody should be just, if they come, they should be just sent back.
That has also a very high cost for the hosting country. So
Right.
to send people back, it has a cost.
Yeah, but it has even more cost to punish, because then you have to
Yes.
also,
So it has for some
Prison
countries at this moment, this is
administration.
also an issue.
Right. What about you?
Why I didn't stand up? Because the reason may be, for example, we have human smugglers, and the person can be brought from one country to another without acknowledging it, and so smugglers, and also the fact that many asylum seekers cross the border illegally, in fact.
Yeah.
So
This is also what was shown in the clip at some point, that some of them just don't have the documents even, because they didn't manage to get them. And there are some refugees who are stateless, so they don't have a passport at all. So that's one part of them as well. I mean, now the fastest growing refugee crisis, you have all, I guess, heard, Rohingya going from Myanmar to Bangladesh. They are all stateless. They don't have the documents. And that's one of the big problems also. They cannot, it's a lot of discussions now how to deal with it, because they have the right to return. And that's also what many of them want, but there should be conditions, and they cannot go back to where they again will be persecuted. And then they are stateless. Bangladesh does not really intend to give them citizenship, and that's also not really, a feasible situation for a long time. So it's complicated.
In your statement, you referred to external borders of EU, for example, not internal, because within EU we don't have borders, so we can walk just from Estonia to Latvia, or just I can buy a ticket to Finland and cross some kind of.
It's not quite as simple as you think, though. I was taking the boat from Finland to Estonia, like I always do, and I've got Finnish citizenship. So I showed my driver's license, when I was getting my ticket, and she said, "Well, that's okay with us, your driver's license, but it's not official ID." And said, "If you're checked, it's 800 euros fine," which is, so that's a real punishment. So I thought,
Right.
"Is this Europe?" They said, "Yeah, but if you're asked, you must produce official document." And I said, "Well, I went anyway I had to go, but I was thinking the whole time, looking around, are there any agents?"
But actually, when you go by, for example, by car or by bus from Estonia to Latvia, you don't need to show any ID.
Now anymore, but I mean, I still remember the time when the whole bus had to.
Nowadays,
Yeah.
So just.
But things can change. Also, this Schengen agreement. I mean, now I think Sweden still has the ID checks towards Denmark, and these sort of temporary measures can be introduced, and Sweden has had it for 2 years now or something like that, and it's still being extended. I heard several times European Commission representatives saying that this cannot be continued much longer, but then it is continued, and I guess there are some practical reasons why they think they need it. So I think we have a lot of freedom that we don't always understand how quickly it can go away. And I mean, for me, whenever I travel to former Soviet republics, it's you remember, I used to stand in these lines, towards Estonia and so on. So it's and I mean, Latvia joined Schengen zone in 2009 only. It's not a long time ago.
My message was like you made big barriers and forest, just cross the border without knowing.
Yes.
Where this security service in Estonia was actually adopted by Russia FSB, like just like big barriers. It was a joke. But and he was adopted, and then he was supported that. So.
Are you Estonian?
Nationality, Estonian citizenship, but I'm like Russian background.
Okay, well, that's cute. Okay, so what I'm thinking of, we're talking about these borders, how we can change all the time. I think soon, when you go back from Finland, from Estonia to Finland, you don't have to usually go to immigration, but you have to go through customs, and there are customs officers waiting there, and if you look like you may be bringing something illegally, it makes you pretty nervous. And I think we're shortly going to see that happening with Latvia, because Estonians are buying booze from Latvia, and the customs guys are gonna say, "You, pull your car over." And check it. So it's not
Yes.
In the framework of this discussion from who is illegally and immigration and cohesion or whatever, and values. I think that in the Netherlands we have fundamental. It's my home country. we have a fundamental discussion if somebody who is applying for an asylum seeker and is not accepted is so he crossed the border and he was not accepted. So in this term, referring to your phrase, is in the Netherlands now the left-wing parties there say no human being is illegal ever. Well, the right-wing parties say, well, he or she applied for asylum and he was not accepted according to objective criteria. So he is illegal.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of also some political vocabulary and preferences.
Yes.
Who is illegal and not.
Yes, definitely. So I think we should try to also move on. Are you enjoying? It's all good? Nobody's bored completely? Not yet. We will watch, I think not the whole video, but a little bit, and then we will have a slightly different exercise. But also be prepared to voice your opinions. So. Oops. This will be more from the practical side. First one is more theoretical.
It's a huge issue right now politically and also just as a humanitarian issue. First, I just want to quickly talk about the scale of the problem, not give you a lot of numbers, but I think we just have to kind of define it. 65 million people displaced around the world, that's about the population of the UK. It's the largest number ever in recorded history, so more than after World War II. 20 million of those people, more than 20 million, are refugees, which means they've actually fled their country because of forced displacement. So it's because of war and persecution. That's why they left. About 40 million, or more than 40 million, are displaced for those same reasons, but haven't crossed an international border. So 65 million displaced. It's a huge number. Often refugees are defined by what they've lost, which is a lot. Their homes, their communities, their jobs, their friends, in many cases family members. But I think it's also important to remember that it's a mistake just to think about refugees that way, because they're just people. So they also have a lot of things. They have hope. You wouldn't get up and leave your house, leave everything behind and run if you didn't have hope for a better future. They also many times have education, particularly in some of the most recent crises like Syria. Business people, doctors, other professionals. Many are also laborers and farmers, so they have skills. They have a willingness to work. So, and they also have a great desire to live in peace. Nobody who flees conflict wants to go and live in more conflict. So these are all things that refugees actually bring to communities after they flee. Where are they from? 40% are from Syria. It's in the news. But I didn't want to just talk about Syria because so many are from other places. The big three countries are Afghanistan, Syria, and Somalia. But refugees are fleeing in all parts of the world. So Congo, Iraq, Burma, the northern triangle of Central America, which is Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, so that's right in our backyard, from all over. And where are they now? Well, we all see in the news that there are over 1 million in Europe. But that's really what made us aware of the refugee crisis, but it's been going on for a much longer time. There are millions of refugees in other places that are hosted by much poorer parts of the world. Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, Kenya, Ethiopia, Mexico. So refugees are everywhere, and this was kind of more of a hidden crisis or something that we didn't pay a lot of attention to until we saw refugees coming into Europe, and all of a sudden, everyone said this is a crisis. So keep that in mind. By the way, these are some pictures that are taken by some of my colleagues at HIAS, some of the refugees that we serve around the world. So what's next for refugees? Well, there are three things that typically happen for refugees. They're called the durable solutions, and this is an international legal term. But they're very basic and they make sense. What are the three durable solutions? One is return, voluntary return. They go home. Well, that's not really an option for most refugees anymore. The scale of the crisis is so huge and the violence is so pervasive that it's very difficult for people to go home because there's just no place safe. So just to give you an example, last year 200,000 refugees went home. That's out of 20 million displaced. So it's not very likely that refugees are going to go home. second durable solution is local integration, which means they've fled to a country, they're living there, and then eventually they will make that their home. That also has become very difficult because the scale is so large that the countries that are hosting refugees, who have been very generous, countries like Jordan, Lebanon, Ethiopia, Kenya, they have struggles themselves. These are not wealthy countries necessarily. There's limited opportunities in the workforce. It's difficult to educate all these children. Medical care is scarce. So these countries are really, although they've been very welcoming and remain welcoming, are really struggling and they need our help. So the UN Refugee Agency, which supports these countries, is actually only 40% funded to provide support to refugees. And that's the average. It's actually higher for Syrian refugees because that's kind of the crisis that's in the news, but lower for African refugees, as little as 20% funded. So there's just not enough international support for these countries that need so much. And the third thing is resettlement. So resettlement is basically when third countries that can afford to do it, like the US, we're the largest, but also Australia, Canada, the Nordic countries, countries in Europe, actually go out and, for political reasons, for foreign policy reasons, and for humanitarian reasons, identify refugees to bring to our countries to integrate and to support and so they can start their lives. Now that's a great option, but the numbers are tiny, really. Last year, calendar year 2015, about 100,000 people were able to get resettlement. It's a much larger number now. The international community has been paying more attention to it, but it's only about, I think, 300,000. And the U.S. is the largest. We actually resettled 85,000 last fiscal year and are going to be resettling 110,000. Of the 85,000 that we resettled, 12,000 were Syrians. So we resettled refugees from all over the world. We are the world's leader in refugee resettlement. But what happens when...
So I think that's...
Is that before Trump or...
It was...
during Trump?
It's from 2016. So, I mean, some of the numbers that she said are slightly higher now. But I think it was a couple of interesting points also about the durable solutions that I think many just forget about them and they say, oh, but they should all go home or oh, we just stop the wars and then everything just going to be fine. But we know it's not really what we can foresee in the near future, right? I mean, look at Syria, look at Ukraine, different countries, and it's a lot of talking about let's make peace, but it doesn't come so easily. And I think for Estonia and Latvia, we have our own experience, our own refugees from Second World War. I mean, some of them never returned because they didn't live that long. 50 years of occupation is quite a long time, but some of them and their children did return. But some got so rooted in their new home countries, they still live there. In Sweden, there are quite many from Estonia and Latvia who actually, and this is what, for me at least, reminds the whole Mediterranean crisis, that these were also people in boats, often very dangerous, not really suitable for this journey over the Baltic Sea, and about 40,000 from Estonia and Latvia moved over. And also not everybody survived, unfortunately. So it's kind of gives me the similar vibes, and then some, at least for Latvians, and that has been a kind of tough point in Latvia's and Sweden's relation. There was one group, but these were people who had been part of the military on the German side. So they tried to flee, and in the end, they were sent back. Sent back, as was explained, sent back home, but that new home was Soviet Union, and all of them were in some way persecuted when they returned, and of course they didn't want to return. Many, there were hunger strikes and different methods they tried to use to stay, but Sweden insisted that no, this is military personnel, they should go home. So many I think also similar points, but let's take this other exercise, which will give you a chance to give a more nuanced opinion, and it's called the line. So I think here we could make the line like here in the mid, in the middle. So I will make a statement, and if you completely agree, you go here. And then maybe you agree partial, and then you can be moving here, right? Maybe I agree like 75%, I'm here. Middle is not a very good place, but you can stand in the middle if you want, if you're totally undecided, and then you can move towards a non-agreement. So you have more options, not just to stand up or continue sitting, but choose your sort of place.
Okay.
So, more options. Now, the statement. It was, Europe was mentioned a little bit also about 1 million refugees coming and so on, and still many are in developing countries, not in Europe and so on. Listen to the statement. It will be quite concrete again, yeah? So, but you can have your nuances in your position. So, Europe needs to take in more refugees. Europe needs to take in more refugees. So choose where you. So here you completely agree, and on the other side you completely disagree.
You go there?
Yes. You should choose. This is the funny thing. You cannot really stand in the exactly same spot, so you have to adapt. Okay. Here we have a nice sequence. So you are on the, you're on this completely disagree, right? That point, or almost.
If I were completely disagree, I would be
Okay.
Intentional.
All right. Oh, you should join us and decide quickly. Look, the statement, Europe needs to take in more refugees. And now you can be more nuanced. Here is the spot where you completely agree, and on the other side, you completely disagree. And then, so you choose on this line where to stand.
Is this the middle?
The middle is where she stands. Here is the middle, right?
So agree is over here.
Yes.
This is the.
Disagree, yeah, and then
It's a scale.
it's like a scale, yes.
Disagree.
Zero.
Okay, let's start with those who disagree. Make the statement.
why I disagree with
Yes.
it. I think that Europe could and should do more with those countries from where refugees come from to create better opportunities for those people that they would be there, you know, so they built cities and so on, not engage in new wars. Yeah.
Countries of origin, right? Interesting. You?
Yeah, but the different perspective. I should be at the other side, but I think we should, as Europe, should we first set up and formulate a clear framework which decides what's our future in terms of refugees and what are the value, what's the added value of the refugees. And nowadays it's completely chaos. So please let's get together and have a good, clear policy. And
then, okay.
Then we can get as many or whoever. Just first the framework.
Very interesting. Having the same sort of position, but really not really the same. Yes. Let's move closer to the agreeing side. You.
I
Yes.
think that Europe has a really high expectation that the refugees will be really good citizens and they will be doing everything that the state is telling them. If you understand me.
Yeah. Okay. So you sort of, you don't disagree completely, but you are
Yes,
very cautious.
I more disagree than agree.
Okay. That's you. You are more into agreement than her.
Yes, but I'm still slightly disagree. Well, I mostly disagree because of similar reasons that were already explained here. That we should be more involved in solving the problems there. But then again, I'm much more here from the completely disagree because to put things into context, if we look at Turkey, if we look at states near the borders of the European Union, then in that sense we probably could do more if we look at the burden that Turkey is doing with their population.
3
their
million
share
refugees
of,
in Turkey.
Their share of refugees is much
Right.
larger than the European Union is doing, with only 1 million across 500 million people.
Yeah.
It's that's why I'm standing here.
Okay, good. You're sort of in the middle.
I'm in the
You
middle.
cannot really.
Because of the wording of the statement,
Okay,
it was Europe needs to take.
Europe needs to. Yes.
Europe doesn't need to take more refugees. Europe needs more employees in all sorts of fields. If people are asking for help, they're asking for asylum, Europe needs to help those people because of the Geneva Convention and so on. But like, we don't need to take more refugees in, but if people need help, we have to help them. So
Okay.
that's the wording issue.
Good, good, good. Yeah, it's all about words. I think many times we have noticed, and this is very true also about media. It's a lot about words, how you say things. Please.
It's hard to say you have one group of people that I know on FB who think they should all go home, and you have another one that says, we could take billions. So, you know, it's hard to say. The people who say they should all go home, you should say that your descendants, even if you're in Europe, moved around Europe, you know, fleeing countries, and so I can see that everybody should have some sympathy for them. On the other hand, just bringing so many of them only causes right-wing groups to get to grow,
Right.
because we didn't seem to have those strong right-wing groups. So there should be a study to see actually how many people can be absorbed without causing problems, and how can we otherwise help those other countries, you know, where they might be, or neutral zones. So I think in other words, I think it's a complicated question, and you know, there are two sides, and it seems that we don't know those two sides very well. We need to work on that. Maybe we need some NGOs to actually work on those problems.
Yes. More people should try to stand on lines like this, perhaps, to find out how they think, right? What about you?
Well, I agree that we need more refugees, not only for humanitarian reasons, but for a more selfish explanation, especially in terms demographic and economic reasons. We need population, and usually the refugees are youngsters. Most of them have good qualifications, and we need those new generations, especially in Europe. Nevertheless, I totally agree with my colleagues from Estonia and from the Netherlands that the European Union as a whole needs to improve our neighborhood policy and to help the sending countries, and also with my colleague from the Netherlands that the European Union as a whole needs to define, if it is possible, needs to define our policy and try to create a common policy in that area. But we need population, either refugees, migrants, and so on.
Yes. So we are cautiously
Yes,
in support, but
Yes.
quite cautiously. Yeah. I would stand maybe a little bit longer here, and that's my explanation is that I think Europe should do more what this woman mentioned, resettlement, and that means actively taking in people, because there are many in refugee camps who wait. But then again, I would be a bit cautious, because it's not good to just take in people and then not let them integrate properly. Countries need to be prepared. Also, quite new asylum countries like Estonia and Latvia need more preparation, Because there is it's one thing to have quite a good system of determining, okay, this person needs asylum, let's grant a status, and then the other step is integration. It's if you don't have experience as a country, as a society, it's not that easy. And of course, I mean, there are all kinds of factors that play in. Politics, you know, and then of course you don't want to instigate more right-wing extremists and so on just by, you know, sort of provoking them. So it's a lot of things that need to be done. So sort of yes, but also a bit cautious. So I don't know. Of course, I mean, there are people who stand over here very much. I think one, if you speak about organizations, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Amnesty International is very much, you know, like Europe must do more. And one of my student colleagues, we were studying together, she's a deputy director of Amnesty International in Europe. So I have seen her on TV. You know, she's very like, very into promotion, sort of like that Europe needs to take in refugees. So there are these different stances, and I think it's good as you saw, even people who have the same sort of stance, you for example, but you have different background explanations, and that's I think very important to know that. We have 10 minutes left. I think what I would like to do is one more very short, like 2 minutes video, where you will see a refugee. And then the last exercise, it will be very simple, but you will also need to take a stance. It's actually, it's a part of, you can sit down now. It's a part of a documentary, but the whole documentary is like 20 minutes. I will show you just the very ending. It's one of these few cases that a refugee really wants to stay in Latvia and tries to do it. He also speaks Latvian. And so on. So it's a story about him, also about his struggles, and you can also watch it later, the whole thing on YouTube. It's in Latvian, but with English subtitles. So you will see, I think it's first time for all of you, you will see an Afghani speaking Latvian, which I think it's fantastic.
Viņš ir priecīgs un pateicīgs, ka par savām jaunajām mājām var uzskatīt Latviju, un viņam palīdzējuši daudzi labi cilvēki. Tam ir vēlākais sapnis ir iegūt Latvijas pilsonību, tomēr tam tiek likti birokrātiski šķēršļi, kamēr viņš nav atteicies no Afganistānas pilsonības par pilntiesīgu latvieti nekļūt. Un saziņa ar Afganistānas amatpersonām ir ārkārtīgi sarežģīta. Tomēr Hamits padoties negrasās.
Es iešu tiesā, jo vienīgais tiesā var būt tā kā risināt man problēmu. Un pagaidām, jā, tas ir tas man vissvarīgākais lieta. Ka es gribu saņemt Latvijas pilsoni, bet saimē saka, nē, es nevaru to. Vissvarīgākais lieta ir tā, ka es saprotu latviešu valodu, es zinu latviešu himnu, es zinu latviešu vēsture, bet saimē saka, nē. Es nezinu Latvijas tiesā, kā strādā, un es nezinu šoreiz, kā būs. Es ceru, ka būs ok. Un jau man patīk Latvijā, un es paliku Latvijā. Jā, bija grūti, bet es cīnos vienmēr par grūtību. Priekš mani visas Eiropā ir vienā. Jā, šeit ir drošībā, jā, šeit var mācīties. Te ir man zeme, nav jau citos Eiropas valstī.
So that's the very end of the story. If you want to see the whole, you just search for Hamid the refugee who stayed on YouTube, and you can see the whole film. Now the exercise, it's actually very simple. Again, you will have to make a stand. It's supposed to be corners, but I think we can do like 4 corners. Here, here, and there, and there. So so you heard what his problem is. He wants to become Latvian citizen. He cannot. And it's actually, it's happening now. So it's still, we don't know how to.
Cannot ever do one?
No, there is technically the problem is that according to Latvian law, he has to he cannot have double citizenship with Afghanistan. So he has to renounce, and I mean he's in a position like, I mean, he fled from Afghanistan, and now he has to, through Afghanistan authorities, get some papers that say yes, your citizenship is being revoked, which is kind of impossible. But
He can't say it himself? He cannot say, I'm
no.
not enough.
No. Some papers are needed. Latvia allows double citizenship only for EU countries, and that's also quite recent, 2 or 3 years. 3, I think. Yes, 3 or 3.5. And as exception for those of Latvian refugees and their children and grandchildren who are in the United States or Canada or Australia, they were allowed because, you know,
They are refugees indeed. So if you compare, for example, Afghan with those Latvians who fled during the Second World War, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Good question. Yes, but now let's make a stand. So 4 choices, right? First choice is that what should he do? That he should return to Afghanistan, maybe after some time, but the aim should be he goes back to Afghanistan, goes back home. That's that corner. The other one is he should stay, but no citizenship. We shouldn't do anything about it. I mean, he has residence permit, can work, do whatever he likes. He just cannot become a citizen, cannot vote for the parliament, and so on. So that's that corner. In this corner is, yes, he should stay in Latvia. I mean, he's doing good. He's speaking Latvian, and he's already also studying and working. So yes, he should stay, and he should get a citizenship in some way. Latvia has to do something to solve this actively. So that's the third option. Number 4 is, if you have a brilliant idea for him, what should he do? I mean, as an example, maybe he should move to another EU country, perhaps. So, but this is like a free slot. So back to Afghanistan, and I'm not saying now, but maybe, you know, in 5 years the situation is completely normal, he just goes back. So it's that corner. So that is stay but no citizenship. This stay but should be getting citizenship, and here anything you can imagine. So you have a solution. Good. Okay, that's fine. So citizenship corner should be. And you? Back to Afghanistan? You can change it at any point. You can change. Yes. Okay. So this is interesting. Nobody wants him to go back to Afghanistan. Okay. Well. And that no citizenship, that's also, you don't think it's a good option? No. Okay. So he should explain why. Because, I mean, some people in Latvia would be saying, I mean, he has no problems. He has residence permit. He speaks Latvian. He can work. He can do whatever he wants. But citizenship, it's kind of like just for certain people, not for everybody. So,
it's important.
So, but why you think it should be?
I think it's important for him to have the nationality because it's symbolic and it represents his liaison with the hosting country. Well, I don't know the legal aspects of the situation. For our discussion, probably doesn't even matter.
Technically, Latvian parliament, it has been done on separate occasions. They can grant a citizenship to whomever they choose.
Okay.
Actually, I mean, some have been granted for, you know, a great sportsman, whatever, you know, or. So actually, in this case, I think theoretically it could be, but maybe legislation changes, whatever.
More in terms more symbolic, which is my position here. It's important to have the nationality of the country represents his commitment with the hosting country.
Okay, you?
Well, I see no reason why he shouldn't get the citizenship. If he's allowed to stay, he becomes integrated, he wants to do it, which is the most important question, whether he wants it to or not. And he can learn the constitution. I don't know what the citizenship law is in Latvia, but if he fulfills those requirements, the fact that he has trouble getting rid of his Afghani citizenship is in many ways an issue that the Latvian state should deal with to assist him in whatever ways possible. I mean, Latvia has diplomatic relations with Afghanistan. They should be talking how could this be solved, and essentially it's his civil right to become a citizen of Latvia.
Good. The other side, or innovative people?
I don't have a good solution. Actually, in a way, I'm with them. I think he would make a fine citizen. I think he should get it. However, in the practical sense, if he's not going to get it, if that's not going to happen, then he should look at the other options of going to another European thing. And that's because personally, when I first moved to Finland, I had a residence permit, but the woman in charge of the aliens office, which was called then, somehow didn't like me. She didn't meet me, but she decided that she's never going to let me work.
Yeah.
And all the people under her said that they would like to help me, but they couldn't. Everybody else, finally, I was told by somebody in the Interior Ministry, who was pretty high up, that hinted that if I went to Hamburg, something might happen if I went to the council, but they couldn't tell me exactly what. So I got on the boat, took the time, took the risk, went over there and went, and my papers were, but I got that by asking around and looking for a solution, because I was going to be going. And who knows if it was a good idea. I might not be cold now, I might be warm in California, but I got eventually the
You solved
residence
it.
and
Problem,
citizenship. So I think that should look for a solution if anywhere within the European Union, if Estonia or Sweden or wherever, you should be willing to go anywhere to get that citizen. And once you have that citizenship, if you love Latvia, you can come back to it.
Right, right.
That's
What about you?
I'm agree with the people who sit here and also with him, because as I could understand from the video, he's not the mission, but he wants to get the Latvian citizenship, and he's trying to see for the solutions how to get it. I guess he will, maybe not like really quickly, but after some time he will find it.
Okay, so you're even an optimist. Very good. I think we should be optimists. What about you two? What do you think?
I will repeat your story.
Okay, it's right. I think this is a very peculiar, interesting point, which I think some would support, but some would definitely not support. Is that this is a civil right, sort of, to be a citizen.
But it is.
Yeah. Trust me, some people in Latvia would vehemently say no to you. But this is the interesting thing, that different opinions come up, and I think it's good to exchange them. And you?
Yeah, well, I also agree with my colleague, but apart from that, I'm fed up with this discussion about double citizenship. I think if you are born in one country and you were a refugee, or no matter for what reason you had to move from this country, then you can keep the citizens of this country, of your country of origin. But also, if you do your best for your host country, you also will you have the right to receive the citizenship, so you can have both. And again, I think it is so that you should be loyal for only one country. Personally, I don't like this idea. It's a very one-sided nationalistic point of view. Of course, you should show that you have some energy for this new country. that you
Yeah.
want to-
Which I think he definitely does, right?
Anyway.
And you? What is
Yes,
your
actually,
solution?
I agree with my colleague. Maybe this man has a chance to apply for permanent residency in Latvia. So I think that he knows the language at the B1 or B2 level. What kind
Yeah.
of that he can apply for this residency and wait a bit. Maybe Afghanistan will give those papers, and he will can apply for Latvian citizenship, or he can move to other European country, or he can just live freely with this permanent citizenship. Okay, he cannot vote for the local elections and or be a civil servant,
Yeah.
but he can lead his own business. For example, maybe if he gets rich, he can invest in a Latvian economy, and then I think he can apply for citizenship, because you have Latvia have a law that.
I know that's
actually-
residence permit. That's residence. Yes, yes, yes.
Not citizenship.
I was thinking when you started talking about getting rich, and then maybe he can pay some politicians. To
No, but it was only for the residence.
Residence permit.
Okay,
Yes, yes,
okay.
yes. And that scheme is now made quite ineffective because they raised the amount that you need to invest in Latvian economy in order to get residence permit. Basically because they didn't like that some rich Russian guys were,
Okay.
buying apartments and so on.
But
And then-
non-citizens cannot participate in political life. I mean, to be
No.
members of parties.
No.
Or
No.
Because otherwise you can form some kind of party or be the spokesperson for similar.
He could start an NGO, definitely.
Yeah.
Why
or
not?
some kind of NGO and fight for the rights.
Yeah. Fight for your rights. I think this is a very good, I think, ending.
It's kind of funny that Europe, with all the European Union ideas and Schengen and all that, still some countries you can have two citizenships and other countries you can't. And it's quite funny that they haven't agreed on that.
It's a long way to go still.
Legally, Estonia and Latvia don't have this double citizenship, but as you mentioned, there are exceptions, and in fact, they do have double citizenship.
Yes. So, but also what I mentioned for EU countries, also it's quite a recent invention. It was just 5 years ago. It was not possible to have Latvian and Swedish citizenship, and I know that some people got troubles because of that. Like for example, there was one guy who got a job working on nuclear technology developments, and for that you have to be a citizen because it's connected to security and so on. So he at that time he had to renounce his Latvian citizenship because of that, and they said we cannot make any exceptions for you. That's how it is.
Are you Latvian?
I'm Latvian.
Okay.
Yes.
My ancestors come from Latvia. Can I get a Latvian citizenship?
Well,
Give up your American.
So you have some Finnish roots and
Finnish
Latvian roots.
Well, you also
I have
welcome
Triple citizenship.
I have the two citizenships. But I'm just was curious because
which ones do you have?
I have American and Finnish.
Oh.
I don't need it, but I just was curious.
No, I know some Latvians, refugees and their children. That one journalist, he has 3 passports. He has American, and then later he moved to Sweden. He has Swedish and then Latvian. So he has 3.
Well, we have at least 2 members of the parliament right now who have dual citizenship, which isn't really.
I'll take that one. I like to have 3 passports.
Okay, guys, I think it's about time to stop. We can continue, of course, but yeah, I think it's good to have these types of exercises if you can do in your organizations or whatever. This is for any kind of trying to understand what people's opinions are, what they really want. Also, I know in some companies they do this kind of, not formal voting or whatever, but they make these types of discussions which really help to understand what people really think and want. And I think it's really important also on refugee issues. So thank you for participating, and I heard a lot of interesting things.